When working with the LEA and working through your interpretations, one of the things that often comes up is how do I deal with blind spots? A blind spot being when the self score is on an island in comparison to the observer scores, or put another way, when the individual you might be working with, their self perception of how they're showing up as a leader and as a professional is not matched or is not aligned with the observers. I think when that happens, the simple interpretation is that their self awareness might be a little off in terms of how they're being experienced. And as I've talked about before in other videos, not all blind spots are created equal, right? So let's just take the behavior of communication as an example. If a leader has put themselves on the low side of communication, but all their observers put themselves on the high side, yes, it's technically a blind spot, but is that a is that a bad thing, right? Is that something that needs to be addressed? Yes, their self-perception might be off, but the people that they work with all feel as if they are prioritizing communication, which we could argue is a good thing. So you have to think about, again, the directionality of the blind spot. The other thing to consider is what happens when blind spots don't exist, right? When the self-score is aligned with the observer scores. Is that inherently a good thing? Well, I think this interpretation is probably two-phased. The first is the interpretation is yes, in a good way, when the self-score is aligned with the observer scores, I think the takeaway is that the leader's self-awareness or belief of how they are showing up as a leader and as a professional is matched by their observers. And so their understanding or their experience with how they are showing up is matched by the people that they work with. And I think you could argue that that's a good thing. Now, the second phase of the interpretation is where is the alignment? Or put another way, where is the score, right? Let's just take the behavior of communication again. Let's just say somebody has put themselves on the low side of communication and all their observers have matched them. So yes, we have self-awareness that communication is not a behavior that's being prioritized, but is that what you want, right? So just because a blind spot doesn't exist doesn't mean that developmental opportunity isn't there, right? Meaning, well, if everyone is on the low side, observers and a self-score on the behavior of communication, you might come to the conclusion, well, I'm glad that there's alignment, but is that something we need to work on? Maybe there's a developmental conversation about how that leader can prioritize communication better in their work. So I think it's important to think about, again, directionality of the blind spot if it does exist. If there is alignment between himself and observer scores, is that where you want the scores to be? And the last thing I'll just say here, which I think is important, is when you think about the observer scores, the goal there for leaders is not alignment. And what I mean by that is it's okay if the observer scores are spread on a particular behavior. The goal of leadership is not to behave the same way in every single situation and have people experience you the same way. You interact with your boss and you're doing different things with your boss than you do with your direct reports. And that might require a different set of behaviors. It's sort of situational leadership at its finest, right? So when thinking about blind spots, alignment, there's a few things to consider. And I think you have to put your head together to figure out, is this where I want it? Is this where is this where I don't want it? Is there a developmental opportunity here or is there not? Thank you.